Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, JodieLynn Creighton.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And this is an unusual show for a number of different reasons, not the least of which, JodieLynn, is it's the first show I've done this week. The Monday show, the guest couldn't make it. Today's show, actually, the guest couldn't make it either, but also my co-hosts weren't there on Monday. And Tuesday, Joel is on vacation in Florida at his favorite bench that he wrote his book about. So it's the first show of the week. I mean, this is kind of in the middle of the week. I'm not used to that, but that's okay. You know,
it's amazing.
It is amazing. Kind of surprising, actually. But I can't remember the last time I did one show in a week. It's been a while, other than a vacation or something like that.
Weren't you scaling down the amount of shows you do per week also?
Well, yeah, I had already done that. Yeah, I was down to 3 a week, but one, I hadn't been down to one in 6-7 years, something like that.
Wow.
It's been a while.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, I'm honored to be your one this week so far.
Oh, absolutely. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. And, you know, before we got started here, I had like a half an hour leading up to the show, nothing really to do during that time, you know, so I sat down at my keyboard at my piano and just started to do some playing, practicing this one very old song that I've been messing around with, and it has sort of a jazz chord thing to it. And so I was just playing with it and seeing what I could do to kind of expand and build out on the jazz and all that kind of thing. And as I was doing it, it occurred to me that what I was doing right then and there was kind of a microcosm of where my life has been for like the last 6 to 9 months. Because since the breakup and divorce end of my marriage, I've been reinventing my life. I've been doing so deliberately, riding the roller coaster while doing it, dealing with, there was definitely been grief associated with the loss of the marriage and so forth, but there's also been exciting stuff that's happened, dealing with changes in finances and changes in relationships and changes in health, changes in all kinds of stuff. And it occurred to me that I was dealing with all that the same way I was going after that piece of music I was playing. I was making changes deliberately. And that cued an idea in my head. Very often we go through life and changes happen and we react to them. We're responding to them. But there's also the other option, which is where we kind of go at it head on and we decide we're going to be the change. We're going to be the source of change. And then we have to deal with that too. I mean, there's still a dealing with part that goes along with it. But it's like two different attitudes. I thought, well, that makes kind of a cool topic. Have you ever thought about that one?
Oh, so much. I'm an overthinker of a lot of things.
We have that in common, don't we? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a principle that I strive to live by, is being deliberate in most things, or as much as I can. Consciousness. That's what consciousness is all about. Like, what are you doing and why are you doing them? And I mean, it's tough being a human. Because you get caught up in the minutia of, the daily life of doing and where you are and what you need to do today and all of those things. And quite often you can just get caught up in that cycle of reacting to things that are happening in your life rather than, like you said, deliberately choosing things. So I think this is a great topic.
Mike Dooley, of The Secret fame, has a mailing list. And for those of you who aren't on the list, it's really worth being a part of. He calls it Notes from the Universe. And in fact, he wrote some books based on these notes. This is basically how Mike became Mike. He and his mom had closed their t-shirt business. He was trying to figure out what to do next, and he had this little mailing list. So he just started to send out little supportive messages to his mailing list, and it kept growing and growing and turned into Notes from the Universe. I believe now he has over 500,000 people subscribed to this list, reading this stuff every day that comes through. Well, one of the messages that he put out one day, I don't remember what the exact message was. It was a supportive message saying, you are a powerful creator, that kind of thing. But it was also referencing how challenging life can be, just like you referenced it. And I don't remember exactly how he said it, but the gist of it was, everybody here on this side is absolutely in amazement and awe over you for having volunteered to go into that world. I thought that's an interesting viewpoint. That's a really interesting viewpoint, because we've heard, and you've voiced this too, voicing your connection to Source. We've heard from a lot of different people that Source has its attention focused heavily on this physical world and what's going on here.
Yeah.
And in fact, I often wondered, like, well, why? They got nothing better to do. I mean, what's going on? I don't really know. David Strickle once explained to me it was because this is where so much of the expansion is going on. So that's why they're so focused. I said, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. But I never thought about it in terms of, like the angels being envious, like, wow, where'd they get the guts to go live in that world?
Right. Yeah. And I think too, the word isn't envy, but it's along that thread of like, wow, look at what they get to experience. Because the experience on the other side, from what I've been told through my channel and various other channels, is that the experience on the other side isn't as exciting. Like, it's not that it's not exciting, but the contrast that makes things exciting and interesting here on earth is not over there. So the feelings that we feel, like, sorrow or pain or whatever, that doesn't really exist there. So it must be marvelous watching us go through all of these things and having this very uniquely human experience.
I guess it goes to prove there really is something on television, and it's us.
Yeah.
We're right. The TV show.
Yeah. It reminds me of that one movie. I don't know. The guy lives in a dome, but he doesn't know that he's in a dome. Yeah. I can't remember what it's called though.
Well, that's kind of what we go through. We are kind of in that goldfish bowl, and we don't realize it's a goldfish bowl, but it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's kind of confusing. Something else occurred to me too as we were talking there, as you were describing it, and I love the way you described that. You made the statement. I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you made the statement that it isn't as exciting over there. It isn't as fun on the other side. It's not as much going on, which is another reason perhaps why so much attention is given to this side. And a thought that occurred to me about that was, well, we're all creators, okay? So we're all able to create worlds. We're all able to create all this kind of stuff. What if, when you're on the other side, you're kind of creating individually, I guess is a better way to say it than anything else. In other words, this is like a group creation. This universe that we're in is like everybody contributing to this continuously. Mm-hmm. And one of the aspects of that is if everybody's contributing to the idea that the earth exists and it rotates around the sun and all that kind of thing, then it doesn't go away. It always remains. The earth is there. It exists. It goes around the sun. But if only one person's creating it and they take their attention away, it goes away. In other words, it's the group attention that keeps it going, or at least keeps it interesting. That's my take on it. I get this feeling that what makes it interesting is that everybody's contributing to it instead of just being one person's creation or one entity's creation.
Yeah. And another way to look at that too, or another thing that I've heard as well, is like through the ascension process, our souls are desiring to ascend, and the higher levels of ascension are, master guides or ascended master guides, sitting to the right hand of God, if you will, if there was a hierarchy in that way. But maybe their job isn't so much or their life revolves around assisting those who are here. And they're not really creating anything over there outside of what they're creating for or with in corporation with the humans on Earth.
That's an interesting idea too. So the creation is happening both in and outside this world. In other words, it's coming from everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept. Well, I'm going to tie this into one of the more uncomfortable things that we often talk about. I like to phrase it in terms of what was I thinking, because the theory is we bring ourselves into this life to live certain things that afterward we kind of scratch our heads and wonder what the heck we were thinking when we put that together in the first place. Mm-hmm. So if we tie into what we're talking about here, the idea of deliberately coming into this world to be change, and how this is where everything's happening. This is it. This is the in place to be and so forth. Isn't there like something kind of like disconnected here? The in place to be is a place to be miserable at times.
But I think this is where the disconnect is, that they don't see it. They don't get it. The attachment to the sorrow or the pain that we feel in this now moment, they don't even have that. They're like, oh, what's that? Like, I don't understand why this human is so fixated on this or that or the other thing. Like, okay, they don't have money. Who cares? They're a creator. Like, just create. And like, you know, I think that they just don't understand, or maybe they, like, I could channel on it. I could ask them right now. But my sense is that they don't understand it the way that we perceive it. The perception is completely different to the feelings, and that there's contrast for a reason. It's the law of opposites, right? You know, we need to feel and experience that opposite to experience the opposite on a deeper level. So if we didn't have anything, what would we be experiencing?
What's a good question? So you offered to make the connection and see what download you got. Get a download. Tell us what the download is. Let's compare and contrast here and see what are they kind of piling on, or are they saying, well, here's something else to think about, or no, we don't agree with that, or what?
They want us to clarify the question because there's a bunch of questions. So what question do we want to answer or answered first is what they said.
All right. Let's see. Well, let's narrow it down to a single question. JodieLynn, I identified her viewpoint about what it could be like from the other side, from the other viewpoint, dealing with this world. How accurate is that viewpoint from your perspective source?
So they're saying, very accurate, and so they're going to add on. Okay. They're explaining that there is a detachment from the perspective. And they're bringing up actually some words that you say often. It's not good or bad. You want more of or less of. It's even more detached or removed, like one step further back. So even the sense of that feeling that something is bad, even though you've reframed that in your own mind too, it's not bad. I just would like less of that. And you've learned, you know, you've built wisdom around seeing the beauty in those things that you don't necessarily want more of in your life, but you've appreciated that they entered your life so you could learn or experience. So they're saying that they're even more removed than that. So, and they're also adding that some of the beings on the other side still remember how it felt being on this side or in a human body, that have had that experience, so they can relate and have more compassion than other beings. So it really depends on who you're talking to up there, how they're going to relate to perceiving this human experience.
And not all that different from the different perspectives we get from beings down here, all having their own different the same thing.
Absolutely. We're like 100%.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it also, on the one hand, it makes things clear. On another hand, it kind of begs a question, because, I mean, we use the word detachment. I'm not sure if that is an accurate representation of what they're saying. It's probably the closest we can come with, in the English language. But to me, detachment also means kind of like what we were talking about before, not being able to feel it, not being able to experience it. So if they're describing to us here through you this idea that some have some memory of what it feels like, so in that sense they can remain connected to that feeling, but others don't have that. That's that meaning of detachment that I'm talking about, where they really can't feel it. It's just not there. And it just kind of makes me wonder, why is it that they can't feel it? What is it about being in this life that makes it necessary to be here in order to feel it?
So they gave me an example while you were talking, and they were using milk and being like, having a sensitivity to milk.
Okay.
And the human experience being like you have a sensitivity to milk, so you still eat ice cream, but it doesn't really feel that great a couple of hours later, or you have a really bad sensitivity and it really hurts. They know that the sensitivity is there and they can feel it, but they just don't feel it the same way as you would with a bad sensitivity to milk, as the description that they were giving me for those negative emotions.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. And so the question though of why do we feel it here and why don't they feel it there? It's the design of this planet. It's the purpose, was to experience that contrast where that doesn't exist on other planes.
So literally one of the reasons to come into this physical universe is to feel it.
Yeah.
Because it's really, you got to be there. That's the phrase, right? You got to be there. That's the only way you can really feel it.
That's right. Yeah. And they're really focusing on the depth of the opposite experience. So when somebody experiences a tremendous loss and is able to move through that to tremendous joy, the feeling is so much deeper and more expansive. And that heightened vibration of feeling is what is required at that level of being where they sit, which would be just above ascended master guides.
Okay. What they said a moment ago reminded me of something very similar that Esther Hicks also receiving from Source. So it's going to be a similar message, obviously. Not going to be all that different. But something that Esther Hicks once said, I believe actually voicing Abraham when she said it, she was asked a similar question, and the answer that Abraham gave back was, the question was, why do we come into this world? Why do we choose to come into this life? And Abraham's answer was, what does chocolate taste like? What does a rainbow look like?
Yeah.
What does color look like?
Mm-hmm. I just got goosebumps all over. When you really start to think about the depth of our experience and how much we truly get to experience in this life. It takes some practice as being a human because we get stuck in all of the stuff that is life, quote unquote. But when you
we sometimes get stuck up too. We should just skip that part. We often do get stuck up. That does happen, right? But that's not what you're talking about.
Too. Yeah, but we get stuck in all of the minutia of life, like we were talking about before, and we miss these beautiful moments that are all around us that are curated to provide this depth of feeling in all different ways, like a rainbow and chocolate ice cream or chocolate, just period, all of these things, that make your mouth water or make your senses just, vibrate. It's almost undescribable how you can feel in that moment. I guess blissful is a word that comes to mind.
So if we tie what we're saying here back to the topic I originally proposed, which is, are we going to experience and react to the change, or are we going to be the change? In the context of coming into this world, I think we can kind of agree, we are choosing to be the change. We're not just doing a reaction at that point. This is a deliberate, conscious choice. One that I still scratch my head about, but nevertheless, it's a deliberate, conscious choice to come here. And it has a different kind of impact from being like thrown off the cliff. No, I don't want to go. Stop.
No. Yeah. If you start to play with that principle or that ideology of that we chose to come here and that we chose all of the experiences and we chose all of the people, you think about the amount of planning that had to go into that, right? Like you choosing your parents, and they have to have, specific, traits or experiences or past lives. Whatever it is, maybe, even bad things that are going to happen to them or have happened to them that, that are going to inflict pain or beauty upon your world, depending on which one it is. But there's so many layers upon layers that just go into your parents. and who you ended up with. Never mind the entire family that you have and all the people that you've met up to this point today.
Well, you're raising another interesting question here. And this does tie into the question of, are we going to choose to be the change or react to the change? If we are making a decision, like you say, to come into this world and we're dealing with all these different flavors and aspects and layers to that decision, is it possible that we accomplish that kind of similar to the way we do a Google search? When we do a Google search, we search on a particular phrase, hoping that a particular kind of thing comes up to answer a question, right? But we can certainly, I mean, especially with something like, chatbot AI, that kind of thing, we can ask the software now to like create a whole bunch of things off of one command. Well, maybe it's as simple as doing the equivalent, the spiritual equivalent of doing a Google search on, find me parents that challenge me along the following lines and have this kind of a background and have that kind of experience, and see what you get. And you get, 35,000 possibilities. Okay, among those, let's do a sub search on, it could be that simple. It could be just like search, and bang, there we are.
Yeah. I think it's even easier than that, because that's coming from our human mind of what technology and ability we think, or that we have capable right now. But I think like they just like pop up and they're like, hey, I'd like to be it. Sure. I'll be JodieLynn's mom. I got that one. Yeah. And I mean, you think about it, they're saying yes to so much too, not only being whatever is needed for your experience, but now they have their own experience. And that's a whole nother depth that's going into it. I'm saying yes to going through all of these things so that, you're going to be this type of mom to JodieLynn, or dad to JodieLynn, or friend, or whatever, right? Or to you, Walt. And then I have to say yes to that type of experience too, good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, this actually does kind of touch on what for me is a little bit of a sore point, because I did a long time ago come to the conclusion that oh no, I just lost it. Oh, are we back? Oh, good.
Yep.
We are back. All right. So I think I blipped out for a second there. Anyway, I kind of came to the conclusion that it was the way I decided to come here was similar to what you just described. It was that quick of a decision. And there really wasn't a huge amount of personal exploration of, here are all the nuances of it. So in answer to my question, what was I thinking? Maybe I really wasn't, which scares the daylights out of me.
I don't know. I think you were thinking, but maybe the planning process, like maybe both is correct. And this is just my, immediate feeling on the situation, but maybe both is correct in that it was a very quick decision, but maybe the purpose was not as like in depth or whatever. Like everybody comes to this planet for a different reason. And some I've channeled for people that their purpose was just to experience happiness. That's it. It's the whole reason they're here. So that'd be a quick decision, right? Okay, you're going to experience happiness in this lifetime. Yes, sign me up. That's it.
I love it. Yeah. But I kind of wish I had picked that one. Maybe I did. I don't know. But if I didn't, I wish I did. And if I did, I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense. Man. All right. So let's get back to the original question. Okay. So the original question is, are we going to kind of choose to make the change and be the change, or are we going to react to the change? And I think we can probably both point to times in our lives when we've gone both directions, depending on what it was that was, going on that we were dealing with and so forth. But when I proposed that idea to you, you immediately loved it before we started the show. You said, yeah, oh, that's great. I'm on to that. What were you thinking about? What came to your mind that said, yeah, I really want to do that one?
I was honestly thinking about the phrase of being. There's nothing to do. It is simply to be. And I was journaling on that this morning and all of that. Cause over the last 4 months, I've really intensely been working on some programs that came up around money and doing. And I think that it's just simply a karmic pattern that repeats. And all that really means is that throughout different levels of my life or different stages of my life, I will go through a transformation within this aspect at a deeper level. And so something that I have been questioning for a long time and repatterning for, well, my entire life is doing versus being. But I didn't call it that before. It was like, how do I want to do this life? Do I want to react to things, or do I want to intentionally do things? So I would go about my life intentionally into personal development or trying to work on relationships or different things like that. But this is not the first time, but the first time at this level where I've looked at my belief systems around I have to do something to receive something, and breaking those two things apart and saying I can receive, period. There's a long statement that I wrote, but I am receiving fluidly, overwhelmingly, consistently, period. I am choosing to do whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want, period. Breaking those two statements apart, because we've collapsed, I have especially, but our society has collapsed those two things into one. It's almost impossible to believe that you can't just, go and play and receive, because we've connected the two together. And really what I've been really anchoring into is that everything is frequency. So it's an alignment of frequency. I know this, but on a deeper level, shedding out those programs that keep me stuck in that I must be involved in the creation, in the doing to receive, and breaking those two ideologies apart and saying, no. The more that I am being in a frequency that is magnetic to abundance, more financial resources, all of those things, the more I can receive. And the more I'm in that state, the more just automatically comes to me.
I like that. That's really good. Yeah. That's very cool.
It's been an interesting journey. A lot of reacting and choosing all at once.
Well, it also kind of blurs the boundary between the two. I mean, there is an element of deliberate change going on, and there's also an element of this is the received part, waiting to see what shows up. It's both, which is, it kind of makes sense, really. I mean, we talk about things, we create conceptual wording to describe different ways of understanding something, and then that's the way we do our conversations. But in fact, we live a life where we all live lives where it's all kind of intermingled. We talk about, for instance, being on a certain frequency, but it's not like we're on one frequency. Only allowed one.
No.
It's not the case.
This entire field, right?
Yeah. We're putting out frequencies all over the place. And in that sense, it's kind of ludicrous and laughable to say, well, I'm going to control my frequency. Yeah. Which one do you have in mind?
Right. I'm always going to be positive.
Yeah.
Frequency of positivity. Yeah. Okay. Just go into a large city and drive.
Yeah, right.
Good
Exactly.
luck to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Even the most positive person is going to be like, oh, geez, why did I do this?
Then you could be wondering, when was the last time I heard Walt say, what was I thinking? Yeah.
Yes. What was I thinking?
Yeah.
But what if that turns around to like, because I'm not sure if the context behind it is like, what was I thinking? Why would I choose this? But that's immediately how I interpreted, but which could be a bad interpretation of what you're saying. But what if it's, what was I thinking? Like, wow, how could I have ever thought of any of this? Look at this magical experience.
Yeah. I mean, I usually use it in the first context just because it makes it for good humor, but you're right. It actually does apply in all contexts, because what was I thinking literally can tie into any emotional state. Doesn't matter what the emotional state is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it can tie into any emotional state, I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying a moment ago. We have so many frequencies going on at one time. We don't just put out one, we're putting out many frequencies. I got a really strong taste of that just going through experience of getting past my divorce. And I'll give you even a great contextual example of it. There was a time, I think it was in March, where I met a woman who I was really attracted to, which was kind of a new thing because I hadn't been attracted to a woman outside of my marriage in a long, long time. And so we got to the point in the conversation where I was going to ask her out, and all of a sudden I couldn't do it. I just froze up inside. Mm-hmm. And what was happening was I didn't realize it. I think everybody who goes through divorce kind of experiences this. At least that's my take on it. You go through, you get divorced, you reach that divorce date, the decree is passed and so forth. And then there's like a 6-month period where you're still getting over it, but you think you're not. You think you're past it. And then you get these little, quick experiences of grief associated with the loss of the marriage or anger perhaps at the ex-spouse or something like that happen. And you just kind of dismiss those. Well, those are so infrequent. Most of the time I'm great, so I'm past it. But I really wasn't. And in that instant that I was just describing, that particular situation, as I was getting to the point of asking this woman out, I simultaneously got this massive dose of grief associated with the loss of my marriage happening at the same time. So I was experiencing 2 extremely different vibrations at the same moment, which, by the way, my little human brain could not process.
Right?
I couldn't do it. It shut down. It's like time for a reboot.
Yeah. Melting down. Oh,
blue
man.
screen of death,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just the spinning wheel. That's
right.
it. Nothing's happening. No control out delete. You just can't.
Or as we said back in the 1970s, lights were on, but nobody was home.
Yes, right. Yeah. I remember, so I had a boyfriend that I had dated for a really long time. We had bought the house together. That was that relationship. And when I decided to leave that relationship, there was kind of the similar experiences to what you were talking about, some grief and whatever, which was really confusing because I decided to leave. So it was like, what is happening here? And then it was like a year later or a couple of years later, my life had, transformed. I was in this completely different place. I was very happy. And then I saw on Facebook, and I don't remember how I saw it, but I saw that he was engaged. And I literally crawled under my covers and cried and cried. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I didn't want to marry this man. Right. I am grateful that I did not marry that man. It would have been, whoa, man, my life would be very, very different now. And like, it would have been so messy and so awful. And like, why am I so sad that, he's getting married? And, I did a lot of reflection in those days. It was really, I do a lot of reflection now, but at that moment in time, I was really struggling with computing what the heck is going on? Like, why can't I get out of bed? And I'm crying over this man that I don't want to be with. Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of thing that happens. It's not like you chose to have that emotion and show up at that particular time. It just kind of threw itself in your face.
Yes. Yeah.
Literally, from Facebook. I mean, it just threw it right in your face.
Yes. Yeah. It was just so odd. And when you know what? It had nothing to do with him whatsoever.
No.
And like most things, maybe all of them, like it's like 99.9% of things have to do with me, not the outside world. Maybe 100%. I'm just not ready to say that yet, I guess. I'm
with you on that one. I don't want to say it either.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong and there's some other things, but the more I reflect, the more I see it was me. And in that moment, it wasn't that I wanted to marry him, but I was so upset and jealous that he was already at that stage in his life and moving on. And that's all that I wanted at that moment. And I felt so like left behind and hurt. Mm-hmm. And it really had nothing to do with him. And now, even talking about it now, reflecting on that moment, it was just an opportunity for me to challenge some of the programs that I had. Because I even felt it before I met my husband, Nate. When me and that ex before Nate broke up, I was like, oh my God, I had in my head, and I think this is like a woman thing or whatever. I was like, okay, well, you got to date somebody and that takes like, 1.5 years. And then you're going to get engaged. And then, it takes like a year to plan a wedding. So like now we're at 3 years. And then if you want to have babies, like, well, you want to be married first for a little bit. So then, we've got another year and a half that's gone by. And now I'm old and I'm never going to have kids. And, like all of these things.
Yeah.
And it came up all again, this timeline that I had created or perception of a timeline that I had created. And what blew my mind is when I let go of that, I really let go of it. I was like, okay, you know what? I can put this down. And if it's not meant for me, something even more beautiful is meant for me. And I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to focus on being happy. And I was really committed to it. I was creating my life by design. Okay, what makes me happy? Like, let's get, my journal out and start journaling. What makes me happy? What do I like to do? What makes me the most happy in life? And I focused on those things. Literally, I met Nate a couple of weeks after that heartbreaking experience. Yes. And that was in, I want to say March. So April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. I'm counting this on my hands. I'm that bad at math. December like 10th. So not even 9 months later, we were engaged. And from December 10th, when we got engaged, I think it was December 10th, somewhere in there. We got engaged. We got married the following year, July 21st.
Wow.
There was no year and a half wait time. Like there was no year and a half planning the wedding. Like it was, we met and a year and a few months later we were married.
That's really interesting. That's interesting on a number of different levels. By the way, I love the part that you described that this may be a female thing. I'm not so sure. I think it's actually both sexes do the same kind of thing. Maybe not quite the same way.
Really?
I mean, you were describing it from the point of view of like being on feeling like your biological clock is ticking, which of course a male isn't going to quite feel that. But I think we're all really good at those of us who are, let's put it this way. Those of us who are overthinkers, we both admitted we are in the overthinkers club. We probably founded it. And in that club, one of the things that you do is overthink because that's what you do. When you overthink, you're constantly creating all these little things like that. This structured time patterns that have to play out a certain way and certain things have to happen. You have to bring this in and that spreadsheet has to be pulled in order to connect to that database. I mean, it's like all this craziness that you try to put together in your mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then those of us who are trying to say, whoa. What was I thinking? I gotta let go of that crap.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. But that does raise an interesting question. It is, and you used the phrase a moment ago. You let go of it. You let go of it. And that was a big, big deal because it was a breakthrough. And it immediately posed a question in my mind. Why is it there are some times where it's so easy for us to let go and there are other times where it's so hard to let go? And as soon as I posed that to myself, thought came to my mind. And the thought was, those situations where I find it easy to let go are situations where it was actually hard to let go for a while until some key event happened. And all of a sudden that event somehow in my mind made it easy. Mm-hmm. And as an example, I'll go back to what I was talking about earlier, that, I met the woman and I was experiencing grief from the marriage and so forth. I didn't figure that out for a few months. Once I figured that out, all of a sudden I was able to let go of the incident. It took months to let go of the incident. During that time, I was hanging on to it for dear life. Mm-hmm. And then I finally made the connection. Well, you'd only been divorced a month when you met this one. What do you expect? And then made that connection and suddenly letting go of it was a whole lot easier. So I'm wondering if letting it go has to do with gaining an insight that is relevant to you about that situation.
I think so. I'm trying to think of letting go. I mean, in those moments before I had met Nate and when I had finally let that go, the timeline that I had in my head and how it was supposed to look, I remember, and I've talked about this before on this show, is that I asked God for like peace and solace because my heart was broken at the time. And I wanted to see why. Like I knew that there was the story of my head and then the reality in quotation marks of what was actually going on, and that I had, maybe these rose-colored glasses on the entire scenario.
Sure.
And so when I asked to see that, I started getting visions of, this is what you perceived the situation was like, and this is what happened. And I was like, oh, oh yeah, that's not at all what I thought it was like. No.
We can call.
I could see. Yeah. Like it was all of a sudden I could see all the red flags and all of the ways that, we were going to be a train wreck if we had actually, moved forward in that relationship. And I think it was that insight that was like, okay. And then the realization of like, I don't know what's next, but this was the best thing for me. And it always seems for me like it's a faith thing, having that faith that whatever's coming next is meant for me and is even better than I can imagine. And the more that I lean into that faith, the more I seem to be able to surrender and let go.
Yeah, faith often comes up as a top faith belief. It gets expressed a number of different ways, but it often comes up as a key ingredient when it comes to trying to manifest whatever it is you're trying to manifest in your life. I also find it to be one of the most challenging ideas too, because faith is that it's not actually there yet.
Right? It's that faith. It's like blind faith. Like you can't put a blindfold on me and walk me 20 feet. Like, I don't know. Like, are you sure that, like, I don't know. I'm going to run into something and I'm definitely going to fall down. Like, no. Yeah. So it's interesting. I was going to say difficult. I mean, I think the more
it can be difficult. Let's be honest.
It can really be difficult to have that faith. And then once you find it, it's like, oh, wow. What was I waiting for? Why did that take me so long?
Yeah. I think we're touching on the elements of what it's like to be in this life that we were talking earlier about, the other side, the non-universe, non-physical universe side. About how they really don't experience it the way we do. I think that what we're talking about here, what we're touching on, that's a big piece of it. Because from the detached viewpoint, that's just something to be detached about. No big deal. But when you're in it, it's a really big deal.
It's a really big deal. Yeah. And there's a lot of attachments to all the things. So like sorting through it is like trying to swim through the ocean. Like it feels like you're never going to get to the island.
Yes.
And you're tired.
Tired.
Yeah. And then you realize that's a really great analogy, actually. They're just giving me the end piece of that. You're swimming through the ocean and you're tired. And then all of a sudden you like kind of give up and you lay back and you realize that you can float. Who knew?
Yeah. Thank you, Source. That was a great way to finish that one off. Yes. So if we tie all this back to what you talked about earlier, but I talked about and I referred to Esther Hicks and Abraham saying, well, what does chocolate taste like and so forth. What we're really saying, I think, is that we came here to experience that doubt. We came here to experience that frustration. We came here to experience that separation between here's when I want it and here's when it shows up. And oh my God, look at that. It actually showed up.
Right?
Or to put it another way, we came here to experience the magic of it.
Yeah. Well, because isn't it magical? Like you think about going from doubt to, let's say, confidence, right? I used to be like a shell of a person. After that relationship with the guy with the house and the one that I cried when he was getting married or he got engaged or whatever, right? It was very abusive. And, my confidence was just gone. I had no confidence left. People described me as like a little mouse in the corner tapping away at the keys. I didn't talk. I didn't, I didn't express myself. I just worked. I was a good little worker bee and, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, really whatever. I was just, that's who I had become. And I had no confidence whatsoever. And then thinking about that person and then feeling the actual like frequency of confidence, or being okay to be in my own skin, being seen, saying what I think, having an opinion. Sometimes those things still scare me a little bit, but
Sure.
the frequency, the feeling, like how beautiful is it to feel good? In your own skin, who you are, knowing you're a good person and you're deserving and whatever. And as that feeling grows and you cultivate it and continue to grow it, and it becomes this massive light in your life and other people's lives, it's a miracle to witness, going from one extreme to the other. Like that,
not just witness it, experience it. I mean, I think we're kind of touching on why it's such a desirable thing to come here, because it's one thing to just know that happened, but to ride that ride, when you get to the point where you have the feel good period that comes at the end of that story that you're telling there, that feels a whole lot better. I'm pretty sure it feels a whole lot better than it feels from the other side, because it's like this huge shift that you just experienced. Whereas the other side, they're just always feeling good. The contrast just doesn't play the same way over there.
No. Yeah. And that's magical. When you think about that moment where you realize something, you fall in love, whatever the feeling is, there's so many experiences. You eat chocolate for the first time, like if you really watch it through a kid's eyes, you can see that magic again. It's, people always ask me, like, why do you go and do sleigh rides with your dad? And, whatever, it's like minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is unbearable, sometimes, and whatever. And I said, my favorite part is watching these kids from the city interact with horses, because their eyes, they light up. And I'm with horses all the time. Like, we have horses at my dad's house. He lives next door. Like, he's always asking me to come and do stuff with the horses. It's like, okay, Dad, just relax. I have other stuff to do. Like, hold your horses. I got other stuff to do.
Now we know where that phrase really comes from.
Exactly, right? But to watch it through their eyes, I get to experience what it was like for me the first time. That joy, that excitement, that like curiosity of like, oh, they're really, really big, but wait, they're soft and they smell weird, and like it's looking at me and it wants to smell me, and like that joy and that excitement that children go through as they're experiencing life in real time. That's what we're here for. I truly think that's what we're here for. But we get stuck in the minutia, but it's such a beautiful experience.
I agree with you. And so I think we have taken the original topic and reframed it in a very cool way that leads to an inescapable conclusion. I framed it originally in terms of, well, are we going to experience the change and react to it, or are we going to be the change? And I think the answer is yes. We do both.
Yes, we do both. Yeah.
And both are valuable.
So yes.
And both lead to the magic.
Both lead to the magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we can actually comprehend the amount of possibilities that are available to us and what's going to come next. So when it does come, we have the opportunity to react and choose what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're talking about really savoring the chocolate.
Yes. Yeah. Not just horfing it down. One night, it's gone. Well, maybe it was like that. But that's
sometimes we may want
too.
Sometimes we may want to experience the chocolate that way too. I mean, that's one of the beauties of it. You can do the chocolate any way you want to do the chocolate.
Yeah. It's your experience. Yeah. And isn't that beautiful that it's your experience?
This is useful to me for a number of different reasons, not the least of which one of the things we talk about a lot here is how do you achieve that level of appreciation even for things that you don't like, that you don't want. And I think that's what this is giving me. This is giving me a way, and when things show up that I'm not really crazy about, to appreciate it better, because there's the experience of getting there. And that experience, like it or not, is part of why we came here, to experience that transitional feeling of whatever it is that's coming along. The challenge, of course, is that it's so much easier to appreciate it when it's something we like.
Mhm.
But the beauty is when we learn to also appreciate it when we don't like, this is really odd, but I think it's true. The stuff that we like even more.
Yeah, totally. I think it really deepens everything when you're in that appreciation phase, whatever, of the things that you don't particularly like.
Particularly in this world, in this contrasty polarity world, when you experience the polarity of it, experiencing and appreciating that negative stuff, I think it's probably even bigger than the experiences from the outside or from the other side, if you will. That's probably one of the reasons why they don't really connect the same way we do. You have to kind of cross that barrier, that threshold into the world of physicality and into the belief system of physicality. Because that's what this is. This whole place is a belief system. It's a massive system, but it's a pretty big, darn big belief system that a whole bunch of us said, yeah, this is Earth. This is a calculator. This is a lamp. We all agree that's what that is. And so therefore it is.
It's like a giant simulation.
It is. Yeah. Welcome to the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
what it is. We're the computers. That's the only thing that's different from the movies, The Matrix. In The Matrix, the computer is separate, but we are the computer.
Yeah. We are the computer. In real time, we're creating.
Yeah. Continuously.
If you believe it. I mean, even if you don't believe it, you're still creating. Just maybe
that's the annoying part. Yes. I can't seem to stop.
Right? You know what? What has helped me with my overthinking, just a sidebar on that, is to really question all of it that comes up. Because if I'm going to be overthinking about everything, I might as well just question, well, like, what are you thinking? And it's really funny when you start to question, like, what are you thinking? Like, what is it? I actually did a reel on this morning. Like, what is the program that is holding you back from the thing? And because I wrote it on my piece of paper this morning, like I said those two statements that I already told you, and then I was like, okay, so what's the program that's holding me back? If I'm going to overthink, I might as well choose to overthink through this to get through it to the other side. And that was the first question that downloaded in was, what's the program? And I was like, okay, great. That is impossible to have all of the money flowing and financial resources, period. And the other statement is, I do whatever I want, how I want, when I want. Those two separate things. That's impossible. Well, is it? Let me overthink some more. No, it's not impossible. Yeah. So now it's working for me instead of just keeping me trapped in the overthinking cycle of never getting to any answers, I guess.
And I've always used that phrase, what was I thinking, in kind of a joking, condescending manner, that kind of thing, to just make fun of the situation. But you know what? I think I actually do the same thing. I'm an overthinker. And I think I kind of asked that question partly in jest, but partly, like you said, in a serious manner. It says, okay, well, what was I thinking? What is that all about? What do I think about that? And in doing that, a podcast is born.
And 10 years later, you found me. And
That's
here
right.
we are having this conversation, and what a beautiful conversation it has been.
I love it. This is really cool. Really, really cool. There's one other thing I want to touch on before we wrap it up for today. And that is that when we're dealing with change, we're also dealing with the ramifications of change. Those ramifications are often what freak us out or get us excited, depending on what it might be. But they're also, like you were pointing to, we can't
both at the exact same time.
Well, it could be both. Yeah, absolutely, it could be both. But like you pointed out, we can't handle all the possibilities. Our brains can't possibly calculate all of that. So there's also the situations where something new shows up that we didn't really expect. Oh, there's another ramification. Well, I didn't take that one into account. But the point is, there are so many of these ramifications coming through in ways that we don't even expect, that we don't know about, that even when we're in that creative mode of, yes, I'm the change, like you were saying, both things happen at once. You also get opportunities to respond to the results that come your way. And they're very often surprising. They're very often not at all on the spectrum of things that you expected as a possibility. And that I suspect it's one of the ways that this world, again, differs from the experience of being outside the world. You have to be in it to not only feel that and experience it, but to learn from it, to grasp it, to use it in some way, or even just to ignore it and let it use you. But basically to be part of that. Talk about a stream. There's a stream of stuff all happening around any event that's like that. And those events are just part of that flow of water, so to speak. And as that water flows by, like with any current, it buffets us this way and then it buffets us that way and, dunks us for a moment and then we come splashing out and all this stuff constantly going on in motion as one of an infinite number of vibrations influences us for that one particular moment in time. Mm-hmm. So I say all that. I mean, it sounds pretty overwhelming when I say that, but I say all that and I'm thinking back to the very first time I heard about the law of attraction. And the thought that was in my mind was the same thought that is in most people's minds. How do I control that? How do I exercise that to my benefit? And I'm now understanding just how much hubris there is in that question.
Right?
I mean, if I can control any of it, I'm doing damn good.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on.
There's so much going on. Yeah. And really for me, it's been this learning experience of relinquishing the control, because where the river is flowing and its unexpected turns and twists and, surprises is even more all the things, like insert whatever word you want, all the things than I could ever comprehend or imagine at this moment. So I might as well just go with it.
Well, I'm also remembering what the first answers were that I got when I raised those questions. And the first answers were, you don't have to try to navigate it all. You don't have to plan it all out. All you have to do is pay attention to how you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And just, if you don't like where you're feeling, choose a different feeling. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, things start to align in ways that you won't know about. You won't necessarily know how they're going to play out, but you're going to like the results better.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's the control. The control isn't the micromanagement of all the little events. The control is in what's the overall flow like.
Mm-hmm. And do you like it? Do you want more of it or do you want less of it? And choosing between the two. And we're right back where we started of reacting and choosing. And it's both. Yeah.
Yeah, it's both. I think we did this topic justice today.
I think so too. It was beautiful.
Seriously. Yeah. We brought that around really, really nicely. I mean, not that we don't always, have interesting and fun explorations when we're doing these things, but that one, that appeals to the overthinker in me.
Yeah.
Right? It just
me too.
A nice, neat conclusion off of this messy topic. Like, whoa, that's so pretty.
Yeah. And you know what? The thought that instantly downloaded when you said that, how we wrapped it all up and came to this conclusion, is that every week, and for you 3 times a week, but for me just once, every week we have this beautiful journey. What's not planned. We don't, like when we have guests, we don't go through a list of questions that we must get through and, everything like that. We just allow the flow and have this beautiful, incredible experience.
Exactly right. By the way, we get a lot of, I think you've heard this, I'm sure, from some of the guests, but I hear it a lot. Guests talking about how they love that we don't have pre-printed questions, that we just are reacting and responding to what's going on, because it's more fun for them too. It's more fun for all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the conversation, like the richness of each conversation we have is so much more than if we would have planned it all out. Like this magic can't be planned. And that's the same with the law of attraction in your life. Magic cannot be planned. That's a good summary. I like that. Yeah. We'll end on that one. Really good. Thank you, JodieLynn, as usual. This is just amazing. This is a fabulous conversation. Can't wait for the next one that comes up next week. But in the meantime, you have a great week. You too. Thank you, Walt.
And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, without whom we wouldn't have much of a podcast. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.